The Chusky Boys!
And this is Chad with Hemlock. What does a Chusky boy looks like?
Chusky Boys, what's that?
Chusky Boys, not to be confused with Husky Boys.
The Chusky Boys.
I believe y'all guys are listening to the Chusky Boys.
This is William Duvall, and you are listening to the Chusky Boys.
All right, Chusky listeners, we are at episode 19. Dusty, Carmen, we keep bringing them in. It's just amazing that we continue to keep going.
It's amazing we're at 19 episodes in. Like I don't
seems
think
like we just started this. You know what I mean?
It's like half of all divorce or half of all marriages end in divorce, but you and I are still kicking. We've been friends for like 15 years,
it's
20.
Real love.
Too damn
the
long.
love is
I had
real.
a full head of hair back when we became friends. A full head of hair.
That's
like
true.
Dan. Like
And
our
you're
next
like
guest.
half the other person. Anyways,
that a
Dusty,
fat joke?
is a Chusky joke. We'll kick it over to you to introduce the guest for this evening.
Well, folks, he's a journalist, an author, a historian, and maybe most importantly, a loving cat dad, Mr. Dan Epstein. How are you, buddy?
Hey, what's happening?
So if you don't know Dan is by name, if you are a Chusky listener, you probably love baseball, sports, a little sports betting. For sure, you'll love the music. We talk about, the music that we love all the time. Dan is a journalist with Rolling. He's wrote for Rolling Stone, Revolver, Spin, MOJO. I forgot about that one. Guitar World, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
He's touched all the bases out there. He's done it all, as well as an author of 3 awesome books, 2 of them which I own right now. They're reading both of them as we speak, which I'm not a big reader, so that's pretty awesome of me to read. My wife's pretty impressed. Dan, man, how's it going tonight, man?
It's going well, and actually, there's more than 3 books, but 3 baseball books:
3
Big
baseball
Hair, Plastic
books.
Grass,
Yeah.
Stars and Strikes, and The Captain and Me with Ron Bloomberg about Thurman Munson. But there was also my first book over 20 years ago. It was a book called 20th Century Pop Culture, and then I've done an ebook on country music called Honky Tonk Tourist, which is available on Amazon. So I've done a lot of writing.
Is it safe to say your 2 most your most popular, your famous books are The Big Hair and Plastic Grass and Stars and Strikes? Are those kind of your?
Yeah, although actually, The Captain and Me was made it to number 1 on Amazon's baseball books list, which was not something that the other books had happened. So I got close with the other 2, but so that was really a thrill.
Speaking of your book on the 20th century pop culture, you've written heavily about like the American 1970s in particular.
Yeah.
And that was something I did want to kind of hone in on because I'm a big enthusiast of the same era. I was just reading Hunter Thompson's Memos from the Desk, which is just a blast to read. But what in particular draws you to that era, and what about the decade kind of compels you to tell people about it in various ways?
Well, for one thing, I was born in '66, so I really kind of, came into consciousness during the '70s, and it was a weird time to be a kid. And I think, looking back, it was weird, but even at the time, it felt like this is strange. This is, everything is kind of out of balance, and there's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of strange stuff. It felt like, as a child, me and my friends were all sort of dealing with the ripples of everything from the Vietnam War to the women's liberation movement to, the sexual revolution. And, and we saw that reflected in everything from, the TV shows and movies we watched to, what things that were happening in our home lives. So it's always been an era that's really been exceptionally resonant for me. And then, with music, there's so much music from the '70s that I continue to return to that continues to,
It's timeless.
And continues to uplift and inspire me. And then in baseball, there is, when I first started writing what became Big Hair and Plastic Grass, I really felt like the '70s was a period of time in the sport that had been really kind of overlooked and or misunderstood. I felt like Ken Burns' baseball documentary, for example, really just kind of skated over what happened in the 70s, just sort of like talked about Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's record, talked about Carlton Fisk's home run in the 75 World Series, and then just sort of moved on. It's like, this is all kind of weird. Maybe let's get
it's too much to touch on.
Yeah. And it doesn't fit into that sort of like sepia tone nostalgia trip. It's, as the 70s were very colorful. They were very, complicated. They were far out. They were far out. They were also a bummer. They were, like I like to say, like a lot of people think of the 70s as like disco balls and white polyester
everything shiny and groovy.
Right, but it was also like brown corduroy and brown
preppy
rice
and
carob candy, and it's like,
and smog. Don't forget the smog.
And smog, yeah, exactly. My mom lived in LA for much of the 70s, and there were days when she would keep my sister and I home from school because the air quality was so bad that we walked out of the house and we'd start coughing. So I mean that there was and politically there was so much upheaval, and
at that point you're still reeling from 68 and everything that happened thereafter. So it was almost like a period of aftermath too.
Oh,
really
absolutely.
Intense aftermath,
and kind of trying to pick up the pieces, and and you can see it. All the so many things that continue to happen in this decade are the ripples of what happened in the late 60s still kind of finding their way to shore.
Definitely. And as a historian, having to kind of keep pace with that is really intense, reflecting on things that happen and reoccur. So your job is just kind of amplified at that point. Right.
And the 70s are definitely my beat with all that. And I can, continue to draw lines, with baseball, for example, this recent, whether it's, the recent labor lockout or the fact that the both leagues are going to designated hitter full time. This is all stuff that starts in the 70s. And so I could continue to draw lines to that. But then I also continue to return to the 70s just for my own personal enjoyment. It's like, I would much rather watch a game from the 70s on YouTube than I would watch the current version of Major League Baseball.
So that was my next question. Then, so you're a 70s baseball expert, basically, right? So how often or how in tune are you then with, you talked about the lockout, how in tune are you with modern baseball?
Well, fairly in tune. Up until about 3 years ago, I was still watching it fairly regularly. I'm a huge Tigers fan. So when they had their run, from like 2011 to 14, four straight years in the postseason, that was a big deal to me and a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed watching those teams. But I've been kind of boycotting it since since I found out about Major League Baseball, the commissioner's office actually giving donations to ultra conservative political candidates, and it just felt like this is not something that baseball should be involved in. I totally understand that owners will give money to political candidates and causes, and it's their right to do that, but I just felt like that's not something the sport itself should be into. So that, combined with all the rule changes and just the sense that Rob Manfred and the owners don't care about the fan experience other than finding new ways to squeeze money out of us, I just felt like my time is precious. I would rather spend that time listening to records, reading books, watching movies, watching old games on YouTube.
So you've been a Tigers fan since day one then?
Yeah, pretty much.
But from LA, right?
No, I actually, I'm from New York. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, or spent my childhood in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So that's how I got into the Tigers. And that's also, I mean, being in Ann Arbor in the 70s, like, that was a pretty heavy place to be in terms of, like, being aware of, what was going on politically and socially. I lived in LA for a while in the late 70s and then moved to Chicago, which is where I spent my high school years. So yeah, I've bounced around quite a bit, but the Tigers, the first baseball game I ever attended was May 30th, 1976 at Tiger Stadium, Tigers-Yankees. And that was, of course, the year of Mark Fidrich and, the year of Ron LaFleur's hitting streak and making the All-Star game. So, I was pretty much a Tigers fan from the word go.
How does someone, I understand your stance with them, the donating money to conservative parties and any party for that matter, I think, right? I mean, really staying out of that particular avenue, political and stuff like that, and then just let it be America's pastime. How do you disconnect yourself from that? I've always, there's a couple times in my life, and it was never political reasons, that I'm like, I'm done with baseball. Right. And one was actually recent, as of yesterday. One was when David Justice was traded from the Atlanta Braves. And then the other time was when Freddie Freeman was not going to be re-signed by the Atlanta Braves. Right. Now, definitely not the same.
Pretty fresh there, JR.
Not definitely. The wound is still fresh. It's still open. Definitely not the same. And I'm not trying to tie that into that. How do you disconnect yourself from something that you love like that? It's really tough for me to think of being able to do that, I guess, to really no longer be a fan of the current game.
I can say like, oh, it was easy, but it wasn't. I think it was like November 2018 that I decided like, okay, that's it for me. And when spring training came around and the early part of the season came around, I really felt like I was in mourning. Like it really, like something was missing, something huge was missing from my life. And like, and I saw, friends on Facebook and wherever talking about, their teams and the players. And, I really like it felt very sad, but it also felt like, I can't do this anymore. And over time it got a lot easier. And now I don't even really think about it. It's like I could have given a rat's ass whether they came to an accord or not, and whether or not this season would be played. We still get minor league baseball here in Greensboro, North Carolina, and college ball and stuff. So I can still get my baseball fix. It's just not on a major league level.
Would that be different if the Tigers were contenders? You think would have been harder? Dan,
yes,
or not?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The fact that the Tigers suck and really do not appear to be making. I've heard some rumbles that they may actually be good this year, but I don't believe it.
Time will tell, right? Time will tell.
And if they make a run for it, I might get pulled back in. I don't know. It runs deep, obviously, but
right. It's tough to just let that go. I'm also a Dallas Cowboys fan. I know we're not talking about football, but we could talk about a couple decades of just perennial shit in the bed. So
I didn't know that actually. I haven't followed the NFL since probably the early 80s.
Sure.
So I just assumed the Cowboys are always good because they were always good back then.
I hear you. Not true. Not true though.
So talking about 70s baseball, and you literally wrote books on these. What's like? And I know, Dan, you and I kind of conversed a little bit on social media about the 10-cent beer story, which is, I don't know if JR and the GOAT are familiar with that story. Maybe you could touch on that. And then maybe another story or two, or even about a player, from that area or that era, where I was born in 83. JR is probably even a little bit younger than I am. I know the GOAT's, I don't know how you even old enough to drink. Are you, GOAT?
I'm only 4 years old, actually. I don't know if you knew that. I shouldn't be on here.
You're the
past your bedtime.
You're so yeah. Wait, yeah. Talk about that 10-cent beer. Is that what it's called? The 10-cent beer
it was
story, or the baseball riot?
One of the and this is a thing throughout baseball in the 70s. There's this kind of like thread of fan riots, and these riots happened for a number of different reasons, but it's sort of like, I kind of liken it to like, and again, we're talking the aftermath of 68, like, there were all these, protests and riots in the late 60s, and political motivations aside, it was a very kind of exciting and empowering for a lot of people a thing. And so I think that sort of spills into sports, where it's like, these people, they're going to the game and maybe they don't really stand for anything other than wanting their team to win. But at some point, it's like they feel like they need to make themselves heard. They may need to express themselves by running out onto the field and messing stuff up. And one of the examples of this is 10 Cent Beer Night in Cleveland in 1974. This was one of the great ill-fated baseball promotions. The Cleveland Indians were terrible. A terrible team. They played in a terrible ballpark known as the Mistake by the Lake, which sat 80,000 people and rarely drew more than 10. And so the Indians brass thought, like, I know, like, we'll get people to come out to the game by offering, basically all the beer you can drink at 10 cents per cup. Not thinking that this would be,
what could go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? So they, what they didn't foresee was that the team that the Indians were playing that night, the Texas Rangers, when the team established this as a promotion, and picked a date, they didn't realize that a week earlier the team would be playing the Rangers in Texas and get into a brawl on the field. So there was basically bad blood from that brawl that flared up again during the
just add alcohol
during the game in Cleveland. Yeah, just add alcohol. And so you had so they drew, I think it was about 25,000 fans that night, which for Wednesday was a big deal in Cleveland. But people were not only drinking beer, they were smoking weed, they were setting off firecrackers. In fact, a bunch of fans got on top of the Rangers dugout and started throwing lit firecrackers into the dugout. So, and the Indians did not invest in additional security for the event. So, there were basically, you see pictures of the event, and there are these like 60-year-old security guys just like huffing and puffing on the field, trying to take down drunken streakers who had run onto the field, and then what happens is Jeff Burrows, who's the right fielder for the Rangers. At one point, ball is hit to him, and he tries to catch it. But before he can catch it, he's tackled by a couple of Indians fans who run out on the field, and then it just all goes to hell. And
it's like a great white situation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, well, thankfully nobody died, but it was. But a lot of people got hurt, including players and there's a famous photo of Nestor Chilak, who's an umpire, getting walked off the field, like bleeding profusely from his head because some fan had picked up a folding chair from a dugout and hit him with it. So it was eventually called a forfeit in favor of the Rangers. And but the funny thing is the Indians were still had several more of those promotions on the calendar, and we're going to go ahead with it until the American League president said, we can't do any more of that stuff.
Yeah, baseball had to step in and say, yeah, I don't care if you have 30,000 people attend, you can't have a 10-cent beer night anymore.
Well, it could have been worse.
Well, yeah, I mean, again,
somehow that was the mentality. Let's keep going. It could have been worse.
Right. Next time we'll hire more security.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They probably covered their payroll that night.
I'm told that Milwaukee did similar promotions back in those days, but they never had a problem with it. I don't know if it's just that people in Milwaukee could hold their beer, or weren't, or beer was so plentiful in Milwaukee that people didn't go nuts at the idea of cheap suds. But so that's really a classic 70s tale right there.
What's the craziest game you've ever been to?
Here's the thing. Like, I've been to so many games, and most of them have been really uninteresting, completely devoid of, I've never seen a no-hitter. I did see a triple play once at Dodger Stadium, probably about 7 or 8 years ago. I've been to a handful of postseason games, none of which have been, ones that they'll talk about in the history books. I guess one that really stands out to me was, and I guess this would have been 2001 when I was living in LA. It's like late in the season. I went to a Dodger game against the Diamondbacks, and Randy Johnson was pitching, and he was, this was like, prime of his career, and the Dodgers and Diamondbacks were still kind of duking it out in the West, and the Diamondbacks eventually took the division, but at this point there was still hope for the Dodgers. And I remember, and I can't remember who hit it actually, but I remember that the Dodgers somehow wound up tying the game in the bottom of the ninth on a pinch hit home run off of Johnson. And I was sitting not far behind the Diamondbacks dugout, and I just remember seeing Johnson storming off the field, just, smoke coming out of his ears. And I don't think I ever heard Dodger Stadium that electric. I mean, people were just going ape shit. And I think the Dodgers eventually won the game in extra innings, and that was very exciting, although it didn't, like I said, in the end, the Diamondbacks came back and took the division, but just like to see a Hall of Fame pitcher get lit up like that when he should have
pinch hit a home run on the bottom of the ninth. That's insane. Wow.
And it wasn't like, I forget who hit it, but it wasn't someone like, it wasn't like Mike Piazza came off the bench and did this. This was
a utility player,
a bench warmer.
Yeah, completely unexpected. If you get a single or a double, it was a good at bat. Manufacture a run.
I'm going to have to look up that box score now and see who that was. But yeah, that was a great game.
And to see Randy Johnson, who's 6'7", just huge for a baseball player, walking off the field, pissed.
Like where I was sitting in the stands, like he still looked taller than me. It was frightening.
So speaking of that, and kind of touching on what we were said a little bit ago, how has the field of baseball changed from the period that you study or proficient in, have written about a lot, compared to now, just from a fan's perspective?
Well, it's a lot more expensive to go to a game, for one thing. It's, when I started going to games, you could, you could get a box seat at Tiger Stadium or Dodger Stadium for like $6, which even adjusted for inflation, that was like, $25 to $30 now. So it was, it was really affordable. It was really accessible. You got a really, nice cross section of classes, social classes in the stands, and it's I don't have kids, but I can imagine what it must cost to take a family of 4 or 5 to a ball game now, and seats and parking and the ridiculous markups on the food and souvenirs and stuff. I mean, I remember going to that first Tigers game, and we sat behind home plate and had all the hot dogs and Cracker Jack we wanted. My dad bought me a Tigers batting helmet at the end of the game, and and we parked like 3 blocks from the stadium and just walked over. I think we paid a kid $0.25 to watch the car. It was really like not it was $1
million to have fun.
Yeah, it was, and people. A lot of people like to blame that on the player salaries now, which of course are ridiculously high, but there's not a direct correlation between high salaries and high ticket prices. That's basically just the owners, setting what the market will bear. And, and I've always felt like players deserve an equitable cut of the financial pie. If the owners are making money hand over fist, the players should not be content to, play for, 50 grand a year or whatever they were making back in the 70s. I think, as the sport grows, the players the players are the product. They should be rewarded accordingly.
Definitely. They're the ones making the money and putting in the countless hours and time for it.
Yeah. I mean, as I've said many times, the only time I've ever gone to a ballpark to see a team owner was Bill Veeck of the White Sox, who was just an amazing character and really like one of the most fan-friendly owners in the history of baseball. The rest of the time I go to see the players, and the owners, I think you could put all the current owners on a missile to Mars and send them there, and I don't think anybody would be worse off for it other than the owners themselves.
The increase of the ticket prices and everything that you mentioned, do you think that's what made minor league baseball more popular? It's from taking the family out a lot more reasonable, and some of the promotions that they run are extremely, I think it's a little different than Major League Baseball. Do you think that comes into play at all?
Well, yeah, although, I don't really know about, the popularity trends of minor league baseball. I know that for, like Greensboro, where I live now, like they've had a minor league team here for, I think going back to before the Second World War, probably even earlier than that. And it's just always been it's been a part of the culture here. And, I think when Major League Baseball, this is another reason, another thing that pissed me off is they decided to slim down the number of, essentially cull the number of minor league teams that were affiliated with major league teams. It's like there's so many towns and small cities across this country where minor league baseball has been part of the culture and part of what you do in the summer, and to just sort of take that away from them after all this time seems exceptionally cruel and unnecessary. But I do think that like there were one of the things that I do love about baseball in the 70s was that there were a lot of crazy promotions, and I think they in Atlanta they had Wet T-shirt night. They had Ted Turner was really a wizard with all that, and they had like wishbone salad night where people would jump into a giant bowl of salad and search for car keys that were somewhere in the bowl, and the first person to find the keys got a new car to go with them. I mean, that kind of stuff, like they do a lot of promotions in Major League Baseball, but none of them approach that level of creativity or weirdness. And I think you do see a lot more of that in the minors.
Yeah, anymore. It's more, giveaways, Atlanta Braves could be like a tomahawk or a lot of bobbleheads. Exactly. Which I appreciate the bobbleheads. The other wall that's not blurred out, tons of Braves bobbleheads, man. So
Dan, I first became familiar with you, switching gears a little bit. I've shared this with you on YouTube. I'm always on YouTube, like you are, watching concerts and old baseball games, old drag races. I'm a big drag racing fan, but I became familiar with you from the VH1 Behind the Music Pantera set, and you're a part of that. So tell us about that.
Well, that was cool. I mean, I've done a lot of talking head stuff like that for VH1 and MLB Network and stuff over the years. That was a fun one, both because a friend of mine was directing it, but I actually had a little flash of post-traumatic stress disorder while doing that one, because I forget when that one was filmed. I guess probably around like 2000. Well, actually, one thing I remember about shooting it was I grabbed a bagel. They were shooting it in the morning, and so I was running late and grabbed a bagel on my way to the shoot and proceeded to bite my tongue really badly, while eating the bagel in the car. So when I was so if you watch it again, you can see that I actually have trouble enunciating certain words and pronouncing certain words because my tongue has swollen up to about twice its normal size. So that was not so fun. But I had a very interesting adventure with Dimebag Darrell back in late 2001. And I can't remember if we got into that at all in the filming, but that was certainly with me the entire time. I'll try to keep this as concise as possible, but
elaborate. It's about Dime. We need the details.
That's
about
true.
This.
We love Dime.
And yes, and Dime was a real character, man. So I'll set it up for you. Basically, I was doing a cover story for Guitar World magazine. It was like every year Guitar World would do, and they probably still do this, like a reader's poll, sort of like, vote for your favorite guitarist, your favorite metal guitarist, your favorite, blah, blah, blah. And in this particular poll, Dimebag Darrell and Zakk Wylde came out number 1 and number 2 in the voting. And they were best friends. So it was decided that I would fly to Texas. I was in LA at the time. I'd fly to Texas with Zakk, who also lived in LA. We would meet up with Dime at his house, take photos of them together. I would interview them together about their, the state of rock guitar today, or whatever they wanted to talk about. And then, because it was right around Christmas time and Zakk had to fly to New Jersey the next day, then that night, Zakk and I would, fly back to LA and, wrap it up and all be done. Except, of course, when alcohol is involved, wrapping up anything with Zakk and Dime is pretty much impossible. We did this at Dime's house, which was like, if you can imagine like a Texas ranch house furnished by a 16-year-old boy, that is basically what Dime's house was like. It was like pinball machines, guitars, Kiss masks, empty booze bottles, just like, and then like this like crazy Texas, rancher's furniture that was, where it was like the legs of the couches were actual hooves of the cows. And
funny enough, it sounds like my house. So that's
it's certainly a lifestyle choice. So and then Dime also had a home studio out back of his house, and that's where he and his brother were putting together, what became Pantera. It was originally called
Damage Plan.
Damage Plan. There we go. It was originally called Newfound Power, and I keep hearing that in my head because at that time it was still going to be called Newfound Power. But yes, Damage Plan. And so they wanted Zakk to lay down a couple of solos on a track. And so that was cool. I got to, witness that. And that was also like the point where, and I had no idea I was walking into this, but during that interview, that was where Dime announced to the world that Pantera was no more. I mean, at that point, they were still on hiatus and nobody knew what was happening. And Dime was like, I have a statement I'd like to read to you, and I would appreciate it if you would print it in full. And it was this, he had a like notebook paper page, and it was all written out, like basically like, my brother and I can't wait around anymore. Pantera's done. We didn't want it this way, but we're moving on, and we've got this band. And it was such an emotional moment. I mean, like there were tears in his eyes when he was reading this aloud to me. And it was really, it was cool to be the one to break the story. On the other hand, it really felt like, oh man, this is end of an era. And then of course, when Dime was killed, that really, that was a very heavy thing because it was sort of like that moment set in motion all the things that led up to, to Dime being killed on stage with Damage Plan. So that was pretty heavy.
How long was that before the Villarosa incident where Dime got murdered? Was that like a year or two before that?
Yeah, so 2004. So this would have been exactly 3 years before that, because this was like December 15th, 2001. So anyway, we did all the interviews, did all the photo shoots, did a ton of shots, and then Zakk and I head back to the airport. And we get there in time. You know, we're all feeling good. It's Christmas time. We're driving to the airport past everybody's lights and feeling like, you know, we've accomplished something cool. I know I've got a great story to tell in the magazine. We get to the airport, and Zack's like, bro, the flight's not leaving for a bit. Let's go get a drink. So we go to the bar, have a drink, you know, some chicken tenders. We're talking baseball, and all of a sudden the bartender goes, "Hey, were you guys supposed to be on that flight?" And sure enough, we'd missed the boarding call. We ran to the gate, but they closed the door already. And of course, this was post 9/11, so they're not letting us on.
Not happening. Yep.
So we wind up taking an expensive ass cab back to Dime's place and spending the night there, and just getting really, really, really drunk. That was literally the first time in my life that I'd ever thrown up from drinking too much. I've always been good about, holding my liquor, and that was not happening that
Throwing
night.
up in Dime's house. Probably not the first, but probably not the last. That's insane.
And throwing up in his bathroom, which was entirely done up in like black light paint and had all these like horror masks all over it.
Yeah.
And
So you're having a bad trip in the bathroom.
Exactly. So it was total bad trip. And then
Rita still lives there, right? That's the same house.
Rita's still there.
Still there. Yeah.
And I every once in a while, I've interviewed her for other things, and I'll be like, "Hey, Rita, it's Dan, the guy who was there that night," and she always remembers, because the next morning, we were supposed to catch the first flight out, but Zakk is catatonic on the couch. And, you know, Zakk is this gigantic dude, and like, you want to be real careful when waking up somebody like that, from a drunk. So I was sort of poking him, like Zakk, buddy, it's we got to go to the airport. And Dime has called the car service to take us there, and an hour goes by, and the first flight leaves, and still can't get him up. And I'm apologizing to the car service guy, and he's like, "Hey, no problem. I'll go whenever you guys are ready." So finally, we wake Zakk up. He gets his guitar. We're walking to the car service car, which is like this big SUV, because of course all cars in the Dallas-Fort Worth area are trucks or SUVs.
It's the law.
So it is the law. And at the last possible minute, like right as I'm getting into the car, and Nick Bocott, who's another journalist from Guitar World, he's in the car as well. We're both in the back seat. I hear Dime say to the driver, "Bro, let me see those keys for a second." He takes the car keys and then tosses them to Zakk, and was like, "Now." So there's this side story, which I'd forgotten to mention, which is that Dime has this huge metallic Christmas tree on his front lawn. And I guess Zakk had accidentally backed a car into it years ago, and it was this running joke between them. So he was like, before you leave, you got to hit that tree again. Zakk gets in the driver's seat, floors it. I've got my seatbelt on. Nick doesn't. So he immediately slams into the seat in front of him as Zakk slams into the tree, and then starts reversing and forwarding over the tree, just grinding it into nothingness. And then he takes off. And then we start off-roading through the suburban lawns of Arlington, Texas. And he's driving through people's fences, driving over their Christmas nativity displays. And it's frightening. It's insane. He's drunk.
Not trashing a hotel room, that wins.
Yeah, completely. Him and Dime are just whooping it up. And I'm thinking I know how this is going to end, and how it's going to end is headline saying Zakk Wylde, Dimebag Darrell dead, 2 journalists also killed in auto wreck, or that somebody was going to come out. This is Texas, so somebody's going to come out of their house with a armed, yes, and start firing. And so I blacked out. I was like I shut down. My brain could not handle what was happening, and I just like slowly like sank into the seat, and I woke up and the car was back on the lawn of Dimebag's place, and all 4 doors are open, and I'm the only one left in it. I'm still strapped in, I'm covered in vomit, and I look out. Well, first of all, my phone is ringing, and it's Zakk Wylde's wife wondering where the hell we are, because we clearly are not on any of the planes that are coming in. So I'm just like, I can't deal with this. So I unhook myself, stagger out of the car, and I see the driver from the service just sitting there on a bench in the sun reading a book. And I said, I was like, "Sir, I beg of you, take me to the airport." He's like, "I can't go till Darrell says I can go." I'm just like, "Oh, fuck, I'm in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre." So
you're stuck.
I'm stuck. And, I don't realize this at the time, but the car is totaled. So he couldn't have taken me out in that car anyway. So I go back upstairs and go back into the house, and I go upstairs to the studio, and Dime and Zakk are doing more shots, and they're just completely obliterated. And Zakk, or Dime is saying to Zakk, like, "Bro, just stay here with us for Christmas, man. You don't have to go home. Just stay here with us." And Zakk would be like, no, man, I got to go home. Barbara Ann's going to kill me. Zakk and Dime would be like, well, just one more double for the road, man. And this happened like 5 times as I'm watching it, and they're trying to get Nick to stay as well. And Nick's got to go back to his family in New York, and Nick's got like 2 black eyes from hitting the seat. And so finally we get the driver to call for another car, and it takes Nick and I to the airport. And I think Nick actually collapsed in the airport and woke up with paramedics standing over him. But by which time I was already on my plane home, and I get
narrowly.
Yeah, exactly. But I was, I was frantically, in the bathroom at the airport trying to scrub the dried vomit off my jacket. And, it's just like, use what the last cash I had on me to buy scope and gum. But like, I'm sure I
just want to get home.
Yeah. But I'm sure I felt so bad for whoever had to sit next to me, because I'm sure like I reeked of alcohol and vomit and fear. So it
and fear.
So that's my Dimebag Darrell story.
24 hours with Dime and Zakk, part 1.
The amazing thing, well, the one thing I will add is like I'd met Zakk several times before, and I kind of knew him, but I'd never met Dime, and I was had a little bit of trepidation about like what I was in for. Like I knew he was kind of a redneck. I knew, I didn't know, how I would go over at Chateau Dime, but he treated me like a long lost brother. The moment I walked in, just like, or just, welcome me with open arms, like, anything I wanted. He wanted to, make me comfortable, make me happy, make me drunk. And really just an incredibly lovely guy. And, aside from just a brilliant and inventive and innovative guitarist, I mean, I think that the world just lost a really sweet human being when he was murdered.
Was that your one and only time with Dimebag Darrell?
That was one and only.
One and only. And what a hell of a story.
Never forget it, though.
Is that like your most insane music story?
Yeah. I mean, how could you top that?
It's hard to top that.
Yeah.
I've had some insane ones, but other insane ones, but it doesn't really, not on that level. I mean, they've been just been a lot of funny things, a lot of weird things, but like that one's just, for sheer gonzo. You mentioned Hunter S. Thompson earlier. I mean, that was about as Hunter S. Thompson experience as I've ever had.
Super reminiscent of that. And just out of curiosity, can we ask about the details of actually what happened during that night? What led up to the extreme vomiting in the bathroom?
Well,
or is that completely just off the record?
It's kind of off the record, but I think alcohol definitely was what happened. I mean, bottom line.
Or decision making. I mean, it's really what it boils down to, right?
It just kept coming. I mean, that was the thing. Rita, Dime's wife, just like, it's like every time you turn around, she was there with another round of the black tooth green shots. And,
Yep.
Everybody was doing them. And I remember before we made it back to the house from the airport, we met up with Dime and a bunch of his friends at a pool hall there, and Dime and Zakk wound up wrestling each other on one of the pool tables, like a couple of 8-year-olds. And but again, it was just like Dime would just toss a bunch of money to the proprietor, and it was like, you guys have fun. So I still don't really understand how we made it back to Dime's house in 1P. I mean, I don't understand a lot of that night, but
there's some gaps in the story, but here you are still, you're a survivor.
Right, exactly.
From Fear and Loathing at Dimebag Darrell's house, right?
Exactly. And maybe one day I'll write out the full story, but I think
it's a memoir right there.
I think some other people have to die before that can happen.
Screenplay. Yeah, there you go. That's amazing. That is probably the best story we've ever heard, honestly.
That's what I'm here for, man.
What are some other notable folks that you've got to sit down with, whether it's for an hour or for 24 hours like Dime? Like, who are the other people that you think wow, what a blessed career I've had?
Well, I mean, the first really major artist I ever sat down with was Bobby Womack, the great soul singer and songwriter and guitarist, and that was a situation where, again, I didn't really know what I was getting into, although in a nicer way. I mean, I thought I was going to his office, and it turned out to be his apartment, and just covered with all kinds of memorabilia from his career, pictures of him hanging with the Stones and recording with Sly Stone. And and it was just me and him in his lounge. And we had this amazing conversation, and he was, I think he was really into the fact that there was, this young white kid who knew his music and, wanted to go into great detail about it. But then also, the man had some amazing stories, and I thought I was going to be there for an hour. We were there for over 2. I ran out of tape. I was frantically scribbling down his answers on a notepad I brought with me. But so we're finishing up, and he goes into his kitchen. His assistant was like, Bobby, you're needed in the kitchen. So I figured this is how he's kind of sort of shuttled me out the door. So I'm packing my stuff up, and he sticks his head back and he goes, "Hey man, you want some barbecue?" And I was, was just well, I could go home and do my laundry, or I could eat barbecue with Bobby Womack. What choice will I be making here? So we wound up spending another hour just eating ribs, and him telling more stories, and and I think at this point, I'd only been a professional journalist for maybe a year, and I had moved to LA from Chicago about a year before. And as soon as I got home, I was calling up all my, music homies back in Chicago and being like, "Man, you will not believe it! I just ate barbecue with Bobby Womack." And so that was just, I would, I've had a lot of other cool experiences since then. But even if that had been the only one, that would have been, I'd be dining out on that for the rest of my life. Was
music journalism something you specifically knew you wanted to get into? Because I feel like as music fans, everyone wants to meet your rock stars and be in that kind of experience, but it's such a unique field of unique career.
I wanted to be a journalist from well back in high school. My ex-stepfather was a journalist. He covered covered the Vietnam War for the Chicago Daily News. Was when I met at the time I met him, he was the Midwest bureau chief of the LA Times. So he was, I thought he had an incredible. Yeah, and I thought he had an incredibly fascinating career. And then, his journalist buddies would come over to the house and drink and tell stories, and it was like, this is the life for me. And I always liked words. I always loved reading and writing. So I thought, yeah, this is it. But by the time I got out of college, I wanted to be at that point, I just wanted to play in a rock band and make music. And, I was working in a record store and doing all that kind of.
Was there a rock band or rock star that you wanted to be in particular? Like, I want to be MC5. Was there just this one?
Yeah, I think the MC5 that would have been nice. We were the band I was in. It was called Lava Sutra. We were based in Chicago. I would say MC5, Black Sabbath, Neil Diamond. Those were probably our three main influences. So I just we were very 60s and early 70s hard rock but good songwriting kind of influence. And so but that was it, as these things usually do. It didn't work out. But I was at the time I was starting to get tired of playing in a band. I was approached by a guy who was a regular at my record store about being the music editor of his new magazine. And he was like, can you write? I said, yeah. I was like, what, but why are you asking me to do this? He said, because, I'm always asking your opinions about records, and they're always really interesting and well thought out. So I thought, if you can write, then you'd be a good guy to have at this magazine. And so I'd done record reviews for the college newspaper and stuff like that. So it wasn't a huge leap from that. And then it was like, okay, I can get free records. I can get concert tickets. I can express my my knowledgeable
that is the coolest
opinion.
Thing.
And it was awesome.
You're being paid to hang out or do what you love.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it kind of I got in. I started doing this professionally in 93. So this is kind of at the tail end of the glory years of rock journalism, like back when you would get flown on all sorts of junkets, all sorts of places, go to all these crazy record company parties.
Being flown out, was there a notable place we're going to Donington this time? And
yeah, I mean, I did. I was lucky that I did get some of that. I got flown out to I got flown out to the Netherlands to interview Metallica when they were playing out there. I got flown to Sweden a couple of times, Finland once, Belgium, it's England a couple of times. So it's and then a lot of crisscrossing the US to meet up with a band when they're on tour, spend a couple of days on the bus with Mastodon or Lamb of God or something like that. And, and it was great. And, but, as the music business changed and there was a lot less money for promotion, that kind of stuff all, pretty much went out the window. I mean, at this, even before the pandemic happened, I would say 90% of the interviews I was doing was over the phone or Zoom. It's just that's how it's done now. Whereas back in the day, it was I don't want to interview them over the phone. I get a much better story in person, which is true, but it's, it doesn't work like that anymore.
So talking about all those awesome bands, which are just incredible, and we got to ask you. So do you have any good stories about our boys, Alice in Chains, that we love so much?
I don't. I've interviewed Jerry a couple of times for his solo stuff, and I've shared a bottle of Jack Daniels with Mike Inez, but that was when he was on the road with Heart. So that we didn't really talk Alice stuff then.
That's the lame story.
Right.
That's the lesser story we've heard today.
Yeah, sorry to let you guys down.
No.
Far from it. far from it. That's kind of one of the things, though. In your life, these are things that are just happening, and you're in there in the moment doing your job. And when you look back on it, do you ever go, "Oh shit, that was my job. That wasn't. I was just hanging out with Mike Inez downing a bottle of Jack Daniels."
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's always such a kick, and I always sort of pride most of the time I've kind of prided myself on like being in the moment, appreciating how cool this is, but the exception was with Ozzy Osbourne. The first time I interviewed him would have been 2001 when he was doing his Back to Earth record. He was recording it, and I was so nervous. I mean, like it's Ozzy. Like this is,
Prince of Darkness.
This is like knees knocking nervous. I'm like, how am I going to get the questions out to him? And he kind of rolls in and is wearing a tracksuit, and he's completely cool and just like we sit down, we start talking. He's like, "Have you heard the songs from my record yet?" And I was like, "Well, no. You're still working on it." He's like, "Oh, well, come into the studio with me." So we go in, and he tells Tim Palmer, who is the producer on that one, who's like we're going to play him some songs. And then Ozzy pulls out a chair for me in front of the mixing desk and like motions me to sit down. And I sit down, and then I feel his hands on my shoulder, like pushing me down into the seat. He's like, he's not going to get away so easily. And I look down, and I see the Ozzy tattoos on the knuckles, and I just about lost my mind. I was just like, oh my God. Like, I've loved
real.
Black Sabbath and this is real. And it was so cool. We had a great interview, and, and he was really lucid that day. And then for various reasons, like, I had to interview him. I had to go back and do more interviews with him this was for Guitar World and also Revolver. And like, they kept sending me back to talk to him. And it was like 3 times over a 10-day period. And he never remembered me from, I thought of, he meets a lot of people. I didn't want to be like, "Ozzy, I was, here 5 days ago.
Don't you know who I am?"
Right. I was just like, okay. But he was always extremely nice. And that was the first time I met Zakk, actually, was at one of those interviews. And
Full circle.
Yes. And then like over the next couple of years, like I interviewed Ozzy a lot. I was living in LA. It was about a 20-minute drive from his house. So like, it was always like, okay, Ozzy got a new album. Ozzy got a new tour. Ozzy's, got the show. Ozzy's doing, I got to talk to Ozzy again. I really I was kind of Ozzy'd out at this point. And then it was funny because the last time I interviewed him in person, I guess this would have been around like 2005, 2006. I go over to his house. We're sitting in his living room, and he looks at me. He goes, "You and I, we've done many things together, haven't we?" And it was just like, some synapse clicked, and like it all came back to him. I was just like, "Yeah, man, we have. That's right, Ozzy." So but that was. I did have to kind of like, check in with myself and be like, you know what, it's really cool that you keep getting to go interview Ozzy, and there's a lot worse ways to make a living. And even though like it can be kind of a pain in the ass and you've done this a lot, you're still really lucky to interview Ozzy today.
The little kid inside is like, oh, wow. I was like, you still remember the first time hearing Black Sabbath, and
Absolutely.
Now you're in the moment with him.
Yeah. And I think for anything you do, but especially like, writing about baseball, writing about music, like it's real important to be in touch with that inner kid, because that's where the passion comes from. Like that excitement, like, when you're about to see your favorite band for the first time when you're, 15, or when you're about to see, go to a ball game for the first time when you're 10, that's the thing that keeps me fresh, I guess.
Has there been any interview that got away from you? Like you're supposed to meet someone, or you wanted to meet someone and it didn't happen, or maybe they passed away, or they were out of the business and they don't want to do interviews, like anything like that?
Yeah, I was like, one of my all-time favorite artists is a guy named Arthur Lee, who led a band called Love in the late 60s and early 70s. Really one of these bands that has a massive cult following, but they, didn't have a whole lot of hits but a lot of influence. And back in the 90s, he kind of made a comeback with backed by a band of musicians about my age who were in LA, a band called Baby Lemonade. And I became friends with the Baby Lemonade guys, and through them I got to know Arthur a little bit. And I tried to interview him a couple of times, but he was a difficult cat and very moody. You really didn't know what Arthur you were going to get from day to day. And I remember one time, we'd agreed to do a phone interview at a certain time. And I called him, and he just completely ripped me a new one for calling, well, the Beverly Hillbillies were on. So, I would have loved to have really gotten in depth about his music with him and his records and his career. But he was a mercurial chap, and I don't think he really trusted journalists anyway. So, really the closest I ever got to him was a show where they were playing with a band called Spirit, which was another old California psychedelic band. And there was and they were led by this guy named Randy California, who Arthur had some issues with, shall we say. And throughout their set, Arthur was just heckling them mercilessly and happened to be standing by me at the time and was elbowing me really hard after every good one he got off on him. So, that was the closest I ever
I'm
came
not
to
with
an
this
Arthur Lee
guy, I
interview.
promise.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm just oh man. And I think, Arthur was in rare form that night. I think he made a couple of OJ jokes from the stage. It was, that you never knew what you were going to get with Arthur Lee.
Currently, you're still a freelance journalist. How does it work with who you end up writing for? Do they reach out to you and say, hey, we want this story on such and such? I think Revolver, Rolling Stone, some of those that you're still actively writing for. And it could be a lot more than that, Dan. I'm not trying to take anything away from it. But
no.
What does that look like from a freelance standpoint?
Some of it's they come to me, some of it's I go to them, with an idea. And it varies from publication to publication. Some places, they just, they're very clear on what they want coverage of. And if they think you're the person for it, they'll call you. Other places, I do a lot of writing for the Jewish Daily Forward, and my editor there, who's a guy I've actually worked with since my college paper, on and off through the years. We're at a place where he's just whatever you want to write about, just, let me know and we'll find a way to work it in. So, that's awesome. And, but it's, I find even, as somebody who's worked, who's been a professional for almost 30 years, it's not easy to get in at places that you haven't written for, or a lot, over the years with Rolling Stone, I've gone, it's been this sort of roller coaster where it's I'll be, an editor I know will bring me in to do stuff. I'll become a fixture there. That editor leaves. Somebody else comes in. They don't know me. They want writers they know. On the outs. 6 years later, somebody else gets in who knows me. And then I'm back in again. So it's it can be really frustrating and scary sometimes, I guess. But I'm lucky that I have a lot of different outlets and a lot of people who trust me to do good work for them.
It's amazing. When I was in high school, which was longer ago than you guys seem to think, I was head of my school newspaper, and I always used to really want to be Woodward and Bernstein, just really bad.
Sure.
And I remember the horror stories I'd hear from my high school teacher, who was a freelance writer for the local paper, of just dealing with ads later on, having to write stories about stuff you really didn't want to. Has that happened to you? And how do you deal with that in comparison to what you've done?
Well, I made a mistake early on, thinking that I would only ever write about things that I liked. and refusing. I was given some assignments. I think at Guitar World, actually, one of the first things they asked me to write about was Counting Crows, who I can't stand. So I was just like, nah, no thanks. I'm not that into them. Which was, I realized pretty quickly that that's a good way to never work in the industry, because, the editors don't really care if you like them or not. And frankly, I have found that, I realized that, unless I'm writing review, or unless I'm writing, some sort of historical piece about a band or artist that I think is really important. My job is not to be an advocate. My job is just to tell the story of who these people are. And so, with Revolver especially, I've written a lot of nu metal, a lot of emo bands that, it's not really my thing at all, but I've found, usually I have some common ground somewhere musically with the people I'm talking to. And, that's enough to establish a rapport, and 99 times out of 100, they're cool people, they're interesting people, we have a good conversation. And, and I'm able to kind of paint a portrait of who these people are and why they do what they do and why the music they make sounds like the music they make. And that's, that's really the gig. Unless it's somebody that I find absolutely abhorrent, they're right-wing skinheads or something like that. I will, I'll never turn down an assignment because, and the other thing too is a lot of times the bands may not be that interesting to me, but the experience winds up being very interesting. And and in retrospect, I would have missed out on a lot of really cool experiences, and in some cases, friendships. I mean, I've over the years become genuine friends with some of these musicians, and maybe their music isn't my thing, but as people, they're really awesome, and we stay in contact, and that's been a really wonderful thing.
I think that just on noting on that, I think that really translates in your writing. I mean, I was reading your article on Volbeat today with Ghost. Well, I had just seen them last week. And they're just absolutely amazing. And even if I hadn't, you can really feel that from your tone has this really friendly storytelling tone to it, and that kind of translates from that article to any other artist that there's countless, of course, on Revolver, but any other artist you read about. So your writing's excellent. I'm sure you've been told that many, many times, but it really comes to life. Never mind hearing it again. Thank
you. The greatest compliment I ever got, two. One, Ville Valo from the Finnish band Him described me as the only journalist with heart, which I thought was very sweet. The best compliment I ever got was from Jim from Slipknot, Jim Root. I was interviewing all the members of the band for a DVD documentary on them called it's something about the Nine. I can't remember the exact title, but if you look it up on YouTube, you can find me getting my ass kicked at golf by Chris Fain, which is pretty funny in and of itself. But at the end of my interview with Jim, Jim was like, wow, that was a really good therapy session. And so I just thought that's okay. That's
you got feeling there.
Yeah. That exactly. It's that's probably the line of work I should have gone into, but
we haven't had any Chusky Boy guests ever said to us. It's quite the opposite, actually. Usually,
they just say you guys should be in therapy. Is what they say.
The only money we make, we have to pay for other people's doctors. So
right now that'll happen.
All right, I know we're close to time. But I do got to ask, you mentioned Villavallo, and when did you interview him?
Oh yeah, I've interviewed. I mean, he's one of those people that I think of as a friend. We interviewed him many times. At one point, I was his last interview before he went into rehab in Southern California, and his first interview when he came out. So we have some history there, but yeah, he's a really, really lovely guy. And really one of the greatest trips I ever took as a journalist was going to Helsinki to interview him and him, when they were playing I got to see them play a big outdoor summer festival there, and I kind of changed the course of their set list that night because Billy told me beforehand that they were going to that they never do encores, but that night they were going to do a special encore. They were going to come out and he was going to sing this Finnish folk song, and it was going to be this big emotional moment. And like an asshole, I said to him, "Oh, you mean like when the Scorpions sing Kojo no Tsuki on Tokyo tapes?" And he was just like, fuck that Klaus Meine. I'm not doing this. So so to everyone who was at that show, and they don't know what they missed, but I'm sorry you guys didn't get to see Billy sing the Finnish folk song.
We're actually really big on that country, so they're probably gonna be pretty pissed off when they listen to this Friday morning.
I'm sorry, folks. I love
Coming for
Finland.
Dan.
I love your country. It's but yeah, no, that was my bad.
Of course, we're not really big in Finland. I don't. That's a bold-faced lie.
Well, I mean, you could have.
Apparently, neither is Dan.
Yeah, right.
Bird. Well, Dan, I know, dude, you got a lot of stuff going on. You got cats to get to.
It's true.
One question.
Yeah.
I need to know this. What kind of cats do you have? Because cat dads are specific.
Two. Well, the oldest one, Oscar, is black and white. The second oldest is Otis, and he's orange with a little bit of white on the paws and chest and mouth. And then the youngest is Angus, aka Tiny, who is sleeping. I bring him over here, but he's sleeping, and he's all orange all the time.
Catitude.
Yeah. Oh, he's got it.
That was a pressing question. Thank you for answering.
I've been waiting for the exact moment to be able to ask that. I am going to ask a different question, though. L.A. to North Carolina is where you're at currently.
Yeah.
What moved you? What made you move out?
Family. My wife is from here. My folks are in New York. It just, it was, and we'd stopped in Chicago along the way, so it wasn't a, 3,000-mile move, but yeah, it's definitely a different experience that I'm used to, having spent all my adulthood in large cities. But it's a cool town, minor league baseball, a couple of good bookstores, and that's
good.
And
good.
Really good food.
We just had a minor league baseball player from the New York Yankees on our podcast here a couple weeks ago. He's from our Cooper Bowman. He's from we're from Rapid City, South Dakota. I don't know if you've ever been to the Black Hills or the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. That's where we live, basically.
No, I have been to Custer State Park?
Yeah, so that's in the Black Hills. That's not far from us.
Real close.
About an hour drive, if even that far. But yeah, he's actually from our little town of 90,000 people. He got drafted in the 4th round by the Yanks last July. So he's down in Tampa right now. Yeah. Yeah, so that's pretty awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm not a Yankees fan. I'm a Twins guy, but whatever. It's pretty awesome he made it regardless.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's beautiful up there. I only went up there once, but during the summer, but it was absolutely gorgeous.
That's awesome. How can our folks find you, Dan? What can we plug for you?
All right. Well, I've got a blog, www.bighairplasticgrass.com. I also am on Twitter, bighairplas, PLASGRAS, Plasgrass. Those are probably the two easiest ways to find me. Also, give a plug for my band, the Corinthian Columns, which I've gotten back into making music during the pandemic, which is one of the things that has completely saved my sanity during this time. And so the Corinthian Column stuff is up on Bandcamp. I usually put up a new song every couple of months or so.
Awesome.
And that's about what's going on.
Where is the best place to get records in Greensboro?
Oh, well, the place I like to go is it's a used bookstore actually called Edwin McKay, or maybe it's Edward McKay. I always mess that up, but yeah, great. It's one of those places where like the pricing is all over the place. Like they'll, have a really beat up copy of Fleetwood Mac's Rumors for $25, but you can find like a pristine copy of the first Emmett Rhodes album for $1. So it's just kind of, you never know what you'll get.
The best kind.
Exactly.
Cool. Also, Dan, if you ever need graphics for your band, I got you.
Oh, cool.
A single cover.
Excellent. I will be in touch.
You'll have to hit up her Instagram. It's incredible the stuff she's done and the outreach that she's had.
Excellent. Yeah.
Just looking forward to hearing your music, because you described your first band as real. Your references were excellent. So how would you describe your current stuff?
I would say it's more kind of it's all over the place, I guess. Like there's some kind of funky 70s cop show instrumentals and space funk instros, but then there the songs with singing are more kind of psychedelic, I guess, kind of influenced by a lot of everything from The Move and the Moody Blues to there's
some Iron Butterfly action in there.
Yeah, maybe a little Iron Butterfly fuzz tone happening. But then there's also like some 70s punk rock and new wave influences. It all one of the liberating things kind of about the pandemic was just like, look, you just got to do this. It had been 20 years since I had made music with a band, and I was just like, whereas with writing, I'm always, I never second guess it. I'm just, confident with it. But with music, it's so easy to be like, oh man, that sounds like this, or that sounds like that, or, this isn't tight enough, or this isn't whatever. And it's just like, just make it and just see what happens. And, thanks to the wonder of GarageBand, I've actually been able to, really, let the creative juices flow, and it comes out in ways that I don't exactly expect. But it's, back when I was in bands in the past, it was always like, well, okay, let's write a rocker, let's write a hard, one with a good AC/DC style riff, and now it's just like it just comes out, and what it is
the muse
is what it is.
There.
Exactly, and so I hope anybody who listens to it digs it, and if you don't, hey, there's lots of other good music out there to dig, so it's all right.
The Chusky Boys don't like you.
Exactly. Well, that too.
Do you guys have like a social media that we can plug on our social media for your band?
It's just look up Corinthian Columns on Bandcamp, and all will be revealed.
Awesome. Well, Dan, you came on, man. You gave us all your time, talked about baseball, musician stories, an incredible Dimebag Zakk Wylde story that will live in infamy. Has that been published anywhere, by the way?
No.
Oh man, there it is. Exclusive. Chusky Boys exclusive.
Like I say, this is one of those stories that I will, that I will tell over drinks. Of course, I haven't done this I haven't met anybody for drinks in a long time, but this is, that was always a party piece. But yeah, like I said, someday the full tale, complete with all the details I didn't get into, will be written out, and you'll be the first to know.
I'm looking forward to it.
We could seriously probably pick your brain for hours. We really appreciate your time. It was amazing.
This was so much fun. Your questions were great, and I'll be happy to come back anytime. Although I won't have another story as good as the one I've told you. So
yeah, we'll have you back for sure.
You never know.
That's
right?
true.
We're hopefully getting a little bit back together. little bit normalcy. You know, it'd be tough to top that. Let's be real.
It's
but, hey,
true, but hey, I still have life ahead of me. So yeah,
that's right. Give it a shot.
So
Awesome, Dan. Thanks so much, buddy. We appreciate it.
excellent. All right, y'all. Have a great night.
Dusty. That was awesome. And the Dimebag story. I mean, Fear and Loathing at Dimebag's house. I mean, right? I mean, can we kind of make that correlation a little bit?
That's going to be the highlight of the day. That was amazing.
That was it was an
Heard it here first too. The Chusky Boys podcast.
Oh, that's badass.
It was unexpected, but as always, they always work out mainly because of me. And if it's not because of me, it's definitely because of the goat asking those good questions.
All right, Chusky fans, loyal Chusky followers. Next week will be a rerun, we'll call it. We are going to bring back the Brian Erb interview, the guitar tech for Jerry Cantrell that we did when we had Dusty on, when it was Midwest Babylon, the first podcast I pieced together with my brother. Not the best work we've ever done, but a great episode. So we are going to bring that one back out of the cellar, if you will. And that will be episode 20 of the Chusky Boys. Reimagined, yes.
Well, I'll actually be with the real Brian Herb, ironically, that night.
That's right. And then the following, episode 21, the following week, exciting stuff. Mr. Chusky Dusty is got a VIP experience with Jerry Cantrell on his solo tour in Minneapolis. So that is going to be awesome. And knowing Dusty, it's going to be a great story. So do you need the coveralls back or what do you got planned, bro?
I'm not going to use those. Our old our guest from a few weeks ago, Tim O'Young from Toronto, he actually hooked me up with his one of his Jerry Cantrell paintings he did. I actually got it on a t-shirt and I just picked it up today. So I'm going to wear that.
And then there's going to be a piece of merchandise you're going to get signed. So you know what? We're not going to spoil anything. Tell us all about it here in a couple weeks. But that is episode 19 in the books.
Woo!
Dan Epstein. We'll see you soon.
Peace.